I've been with my husband for 6 years. He moved into my home 3 years ago, and we married shortly after. A year prior to him moving in with me, he got himself a dog. It wasn't a joint decision. I would have said no because I'm allergic to dog saliva, which he 100% knew. He told me he got the dog after he already went and paid $800 for her from a backyard breeder. She's a cowboy corgi healer mix. He started talking to me about moving in with me maybe 6 months after he got the dog, and I was pretty blunt in saying that it likely can't happen because I would never be okay with the dog living in my home with my allergy. He started talking about these allergy shots that his sister takes so she can have her dogs, but I refused because I don't want to take shots meds to be around a dog that I never wanted. Not only that, but the dog nips and always has. I watched her latch right onto his nose, chin, mouth several times and draw blood, and he never corrected her because she's just telling me she loves me. So I'm all set with that. I suggested we just live apart. He said that wasn't an option for him and that he would figure it out. 3 days later, he told me that his mother wanted his dog, so he was just going to let her keep her, and this way, he'd still be able to visit her. In the past 3.5 years, he has seen the dog maybe 4 times. Fast forward to December of 2022. We find out we are expecting a baby. While going through the discussions and everything, I told him I didn't want any dog near the baby at all until she was older. My husband completely agreed with me and said he didn't want dogs near the baby either. We had our daughter in September. She's almost 5 months old now. The dog issue was never brought up again. However, he tells me yesterday his mom is stopping by, so I go to the store to grab some food to cook. I left the baby with him at home. When I got back, his mother was already here, and she had brought the dog with her. When I walked inside, my husband was holding the dog in his arms. My mother-in-law was holding my baby, and they were putting them close together, saying, "Ah, you love the baby," or "Ah, you love the doggy. Be easy with the doggy." My daughter was screaming, and the dog had whale eyes, trying to kick out of my husband's arms to get to the baby while throat growling. I flipped out. I took my baby from my mother-in-law and told them both to get the F out of my house. My husband immediately doubled down and said, "I wasn't letting them get too close. It's fine." So I told him that we agreed to not have dogs around the baby at all, and he said, "Well, I figured you meant your mom's dogs. My mom has pit bulls." They ended up leaving, during which time I broke out in hives just from holding my baby. So I know they had the dog and my baby much closer than they claim because she clearly had dog saliva on her. My husband has been texting and calling, saying I'm blowing this out of proportion and that nothing happened. I argued that I've seen that dog latch onto his face and draw blood, and he agreed to not have any dog around our baby, so I had nothing else to say to him. I then put my phone up and stepped away from it for about 6 hours. When I returned, there were over 90 missed calls and texts. His last text said, "You're the only freaking reason I got rid of my dog to begin with, and I will never forgive you for it. I've resented you for years. I've missed my dog endlessly this entire time, and I couldn't even tell you because you're so anti-dog. My dog would never hurt my daughter." Am I the idiot? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot. What, he just wants to test it until your daughter gets bit? No way. And F him for playing dumb. Also, if he resents you over a stupid dog that you're very allergic to, extra F him. There is no future here unless he gets his head out of his butt ASAP. Comment 2, document everything. Your husband is a piece of shit willing to risk your health and your baby's life. Hard, not the idiot. Protect your baby and protect yourself. Question. Why did you think it was a good idea to have a baby with a man who enabled a dog to draw blood? Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the support on my last post. It's been a wild couple of weeks since then, and I've got an update for you all. After the incident with the dog and my baby, things between my husband and me were tense, to say the least. He stayed at his mom's for a few days, which gave me some time to cool off and think about everything. I couldn't shake the image of my daughter screaming and the dog's aggressive behavior. It was a clear breach of trust, and I felt like my husband had completely disregarded our agreement and my feelings. During the time he was away, I couldn't help but remember the early days of our relationship. We had such a strong connection, and it felt like we could get through anything together. But the dog situation had been a thorn in our side from the start. I remembered how he'd surprise me with little gifts or plan spontaneous trips to make me happy. It was hard to reconcile that thoughtful man with the one who had so blatantly ignored my concerns about our daughter's safety. When he finally came back to talk, it was clear we were both exhausted from the fighting. He admitted that he had been harboring resentment towards me for making him give up his dog. He confessed that he felt like a part of him was missing without her, and that he had been secretly visiting the dog at his mom's house more often than he let on. I was shocked. I had no idea he was feeling this way. I thought about the times I'd seen him withdraw into himself, and I realized that those moments might have been connected to his feelings about the dog. It was a side of him I hadn't fully understood. We both knew we needed to find a solution that wouldn't end with one of us feeling bitter. After a long and emotional conversation, we came to a compromise. We agreed that he could visit the dog at his mom's house whenever he wanted, but the dog would never come to our home. In return, he promised to respect my boundaries and ensure our daughter's safety was always the top priority. It wasn't an easy decision, and I could tell it was still a sore spot for him, but he seemed relieved that he didn't have to cut the dog out of his life completely. I had to admit, seeing him light up talking about his visits with the dog made me feel a little guilty for being so rigid before. But just when I thought we were on the path to healing, another news dropped. My husband's mom called me out of the blue, and what she said left me reeling. She told me that she was planning to move to a smaller place and couldn't take the dog with her. She had assumed that, with our baby being older now, we might reconsider and take the dog in. I was floored. The idea of having the dog in our home again, especially after everything that had happened, was overwhelming. I could feel the old anxiety creeping back in, but I also saw the desperate hope in my husband's eyes when I told him about the call. We had another long discussion, and this time it was even harder. I could see how much he missed his dog, and I knew I couldn't ask him to give her up again. But I also couldn't compromise my health or our daughter's safety. In the end, we found a neighbor who was willing to take the dog in. They had a big yard and no other pets, and they were thrilled to have a new furry friend. My husband would be able to see the dog whenever he wanted, and I wouldn't have to worry about my allergies or our daughter's safety. It was a bittersweet resolution. My husband was grateful that the dog would have a good home so close by, but I knew he still wished things could be different. As for me, I was relieved that we'd found a way to keep the dog out of our home without causing my husband more pain. The last few days have been a bit of a roller coaster. My husband has been visiting the dog at our neighbor's house, and I can tell it's helped him cope with the change. Our daughter is growing more each day, and I'm just trying to focus on our little family. Aunt makes huge reservation at our family restaurant and refuses to pay the bill. So I stand my ground and threaten to call cops until her husband pays and relatives freak out. But karma hits hard. When my dad, 44-year-old male, owns a restaurant, and my mom, 41-year-old female, had some of her relatives visiting our city, so they made a reservation for 25 people at our restaurant. My dad handles most of the things happening in the restaurant, but when he's gone or tired, he asked me, 17-year-old male, and my older brother, 19-year-old male, to manage everything in the restaurant, just making sure all the ingredients arrive in the morning, cross-checking the money in the register, the usual things. My brother has evening classes in his college, so he would take care of the restaurant in the morning and I would do it in the evening. We've been doing this regularly since I was 16, so I know the gist of things. Unfortunately, my dad had a meeting with the investor about opening another branch, so he wouldn't be there that week. So, the day arrives, and the relatives, my aunt, her family, and in-laws, and their friends arrive at the restaurant, and they order a lot of food. Everything goes smoothly, and they are happy with the food and service. After this, they were given the bill by one of the servers. A few minutes later, My aunt comes downstairs holding the bill and asks me what this was for. I told her it was for the food that they ate, and she says that she didn't expect she would have to pay since her parents don't pay when they dine here. I tell her that's just for 2 people, and they only visit our city once or twice a year. At this point, she's pissed, and she keeps repeating that she won't pay the bill for a large amount because she's family and some other beasts. So, I don't know what to do at this point. I called my brother and my dad, and as expected, neither picked up. So I left a voicemail to both of them explaining the situation and asking them what I should do. During this time, some of the guests started leaving, and my aunt and her family, except her husband who was nowhere to be seen, tried to leave the restaurant. But luckily, the guard had heard the commotion and understood that she hadn't paid and stopped her from leaving. At this point, everyone in the restaurant is looking at her and shooting angry looks at her. So she calls my mom and tells her everything, and my mom asks me to exempt them from paying. Now this is the part where I might be the jerk. I tell my mom they are going to have to pay for what they ate, and I would call the cops if they refused. My aunt started throwing another tantrum, and I went back to grab my phone to check if my brother or dad had responded, but her family thought I was going to call the cops, and she starts calling me every swear in the book for not being helpful to the family. At this point, her husband comes from upstairs, and he asks me how much the amount was, and paid me. He told his family to go to the car and apologize to me for the mess his wife created, and then left. Less than an hour passes by, and my brother comes to the restaurant, and I tell him the whole situation. He tells me I did the right thing. The next day, when I wake up and check my phone, I find hundreds of text messages from relatives from my mom's side calling me a jerk for not helping family. So, am I the jerk for making my aunt pay after she got quite the bill at my dad's restaurant? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Well done, OP. You not only saved your restaurant from a large loss that night, but you also saved it from huge losses in the future. Because if every damn relative you have thinks they can eat there for free, they would bankrupt the business. Comment 2. Not the idiot. I get comping a 2-person party, but 25 people? Unless it was arranged in advance to be on the house, I would always expect to pay. You did well, kid. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, it's been 3 months since I last posted about the restaurant drama with my aunt. You guys won't believe the whirlwind it's been since then. Buckle up, because this update is a wild ride. First off, let me fill you in on some history that I didn't mention before. My aunt has always been the type to push boundaries, especially when it comes to family. She's the one who would show up uninvited to events or borrow things and never return them. My dad, being the soft-hearted guy he is, usually lets it slide. But this time, things went too far, even for him. After the incident, things were tense at home. My mom was caught between her sister and the rest of the family. She's always been the peacemaker, but this time she was really struggling. My dad, on the other hand, was furious when he found out. He's put his blood, sweat, and tears into that restaurant, and for my aunt to disrespect it like that was a slap in the face. Now for the juicy updates. A week after the showdown, my aunt tried to smooth things over by inviting us to a fancy dinner, her treat. It was awkward, to say the least. My brother and I went along, trying to keep the peace. But halfway through dinner, my aunt's credit card got declined. Talk about karma. She had to call her husband to come and bail her out again. It was a scene straight out of a soap opera. But wait, it gets better. My dad's investor, who was at the meeting during the original incident, heard about what happened and was impressed by how I handled things. He's a big believer in strong family values and respecting one's business. So he offered me a summer internship to learn more about the restaurant industry. I was over the moon. Meanwhile, my brother, who's always been the more responsible one, started taking more of an interest in the restaurant's finances. He discovered that there had been some discrepancies in the past when my aunt had helped out with the books. We're talking about missing money that no one could account for. My dad was shocked. He couldn't believe his own sister-in-law could do something like that. The confrontation that followed was like a scene from a movie. My dad confronted my aunt, and she denied everything. But my brother had the evidence. It was undeniable. My aunt's husband was there too, and you could see the disappointment in his eyes. He had no idea about any of this. In the end, my aunt was banned from the restaurant. My dad said he couldn't trust her anymore, and he had to protect his business. It was a tough decision, but it had to be done. My mom was sad about the whole situation, but she knew it was the right thing to do. As for the rest of the family, they started to see my aunt's true colors. The hundreds of texts calling me names stopped, and some even apologized for jumping to conclusions. It was a relief to know that not everyone was against me. But here's the subtle justice that really made everything worth it. Remember how my aunt's husband paid the bill that night? Well, he's a pretty influential guy in the community. He was so embarrassed by the whole ordeal that he started bringing his business associates to the restaurant. Our sales have been through the roof ever since. It's like he's trying to make up for his wife's behavior by giving us his business. And just last week, during one of the busiest nights, my aunt came to the restaurant. She probably thought enough time had passed and that she could just waltz back in. But the new hostess, who had been briefed about the situation, stopped her at the door. My aunt tried to argue, but the hostess stood her ground. I watched from across the room as my aunt turned around and left. It was the first time I'd seen her not get her way. Fiancé keeps buying flashy gifts. I hate to show off wealth, so I confront them and we start therapy, but I dive into my art and slowly they begin to value our time over money. The other day, my fiancé and I were hanging out with his friend James and James's girlfriend Naomi. My fiancé currently owns a company that his dad started back 18 years ago, as he inherited it in his dad's passing 2 years ago. He's now extremely wealthy. When I got together with him 8 years ago, he was broke, depressed, and living in his sister's basement and didn't have a job. I worked full-time. Money never bothered me the way it bothered my fiancé. He is quite materialistic, whereas I'm the opposite. When I go shopping, I buy stuff for him, but I don't even remember the last time I had a desire to buy myself anything. Big, extravagant things just don't appeal to me. I drive a 2007 Toyota for crying out loud. With that said, I do currently own and operate my own business, but I make significantly less than my fiancé does now. I make about $56,000 a year, and he made around $120,000 last year. He made $250,000-ish the year before, but it entirely depends on how much he works. He made less this year because he was out on a boat flaunting his lifestyle all summer. The money changed him. That's all I'm going to say. He's just different. His ego is completely inflated and he feels untouchable. He has bought a huge house and has 5 different vehicles in our driveway. He buys me gifts constantly, but it's stuff I would never buy myself. Like, he bought me a Gucci handbag 3 days ago for our anniversary, knowing I don't use them. I obviously said thank you and acted totally appreciative, but he knows I don't like this stuff either, so it did hurt, and actions like this, which happen all the time, make me feel unheard. I'm an art junkie. I paint and draw. I read books constantly. I do not keep up with fashion statements, but instead of getting me a book or a canvas, he gets me a Gucci bag. I decay. It bothered me because he's trying to make me look better for him and his image. He hasn't outright said that. He tries saying, I just want you to have nice things. So anyways, we are with James and Naomi the other day. James and I get along really well, but Naomi and I are just opposites. She's definitely big on appearance and money and gives James a super hard time constantly for not providing a better life for them. She doesn't work. James is more laid back. He's happy with what he has, a cozy home, a couple cars, but nothing extravagant. The topic of money came up after Naomi mentioned James not making enough for them, and my fiancé starts gloating. Says he offered James a job, but James said no. But then he made the comment of, yeah, my lady wouldn't have nice things if it weren't for me. So I asked what he meant by that, and he said, well, we know you won't spend money on yourself for whatever reason, so you definitely wouldn't have nice things if I didn't get them. Like, look at this Gucci bag. You need me to get your stuff or you would just never have anything. It was at that point that I told him I didn't need him or his gifts. He looked uncomfortable and said, well, I didn't mean it like that. and changed the subject. James and Naomi were just eyeballing us the whole time. After we left, he said I embarrassed him and that I shouldn't have said that shoot because I took it out of context and made him look like an idiot. I told him he wasn't trying to impress Naomi by flaunting money. This wouldn't have happened. He has barely spoken to me since. Am I the idiot? Ada. Before he bought this giant house, I owned my own property. I bought us a 2-bedroom home 4 years ago. I currently rent it out because I liked the house and didn't want to sell it. And yes, I've communicated my feelings on this stuff, and he says, when you got with me, I didn't have a penny to my name, and I wasn't able to spoil you, so now I am. But when I tell him that I would be happier with a book or art supplies, he says that stuff is cheap or not good enough and wants me to experience luxury. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot. But if you want this relationship to last, then you need to schedule a couples therapy appointment immediately. Because he's not hearing you when you tell him what your interests needs are, and you're having a hard time understanding that. It sounds like giving gifts are his love language and he enjoys showing you off. I will say that money does change people, and unfortunately not for the better usually. You need an intermediary to explain to him how you feel he's changed and find a middle common ground. Maybe sit down and discuss where you both want to be in 5 to 10 years from now, along with your personal, short, long-term goals, financial, etc. Good luck. Comment 2, not the idiot. He's all about keeping up the flashy image. It's clear that isn't what you want. It looks certain that you don't want to spend the rest of your life dealing with him and his need to turn you equally flashy. You have history with this guy, but it looks like he isn't the man you had started dating. I'd recommend moving on. Let the Naomis of the world fawn over his wealth while you snag a better man. Now for the update. Hey Reddit, it's been a month since my last post, and boy do I have an update for you all. After that awkward hangout with James and Naomi, things between my fiancé and I were tense, to say the least. He was mad at me for calling him out, and I was frustrated with his materialistic attitude. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. Remember how I told you about my fiancé's inflated ego and his obsession with flaunting his wealth? Well, it got worse. He started going out more, leaving me at home while he partied on his boat with people I didn't even know. It was like he was living a double life, one where he was this big shot and I was just an accessory to his lifestyle. One day, I decided to surprise him with lunch at his office. I thought maybe we could talk things out, but when I got there, I found him in his office with Naomi. They were a little too close for comfort, and the look on their faces said it all. I was shocked, hurt, and angry. I didn't even confront them. I just left the lunch on his desk and walked out. I went straight to my rental property, the 2-bedroom home I bought before we moved into the giant house. It felt good to be in a place that was truly mine, a place that held so many memories before money changed everything. I spent the night there, thinking about everything that had happened. The next day, my fiancé came over full of apologies. He said nothing happened with Naomi, that they were just talking about work, but I didn't believe him. I told him about how I felt unheard and how his actions were pushing me away. He tried to explain that he was just trying to give me the life he thought I deserved, but I wasn't buying it. We had a long, hard talk about our relationship and what we both wanted out of life. I reminded him of the days when he was broke and depressed, and how we had supported each other through thick and thin. I told him that I didn't need expensive gifts to be happy. I just needed him to be the person I fell in love with. Surprisingly, he listened. He admitted that he had lost himself in the wealth and promised to make changes. He even suggested couples therapy, which we started attending. It's been helping us communicate better and understand each other's perspectives. In the midst of all this, I decided to focus on my own happiness. I started painting more and even held a small exhibition at a local gallery. It was a hit, and I sold a few pieces. My fiancé came to the exhibition, and for the first time in a long time, I saw a glimmer of the old him. He was genuinely proud of me, and it felt amazing. As for Naomi, she and James broke up. Turns out she had been pressuring him to live a lifestyle he couldn't afford, and after seeing what happened between my fiancé and me, James had enough. He's been focusing on his own happiness too, and we've become even better friends because of it. My fiancé has been making an effort to change. He sold 2 of the cars and has been spending more time with me, doing things we both enjoy. He even surprised me with a new set of paintbrushes and a stack of canvases, which meant the world to me. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.